Hey guys, today we're talking Take-Two's massive acquisition, interesting nuggets from Phil Spencer's New York Times interview, and Sony is ramping up production for the PlayStation 4? All that and more on this edition of the Dear Listeners Newsroom. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dear Listeners Newsroom, TRG's weekly news recap. My name is Micah Hendrick. Here are the top headlines for January 14th, 2022. Acquisition season continues as Take-Two Interactive, one of the biggest publishing labels in the industry, announced on Monday that they have acquired mobile gaming giant Zynga. In a press release, Take-Two stated that the two companies have, quote, entered into a definitive agreement under which Take-Two will acquire all of the outstanding shares of Zynga in a cash and stock transaction valued at $9.86 per Zynga share, based on the market close as of January 7, 2022, with a total enterprise value of approximately $12.7 billion. The news contributed to a 15-point drop in Take-Two stock as investors feared the acquisition was overvalued. The market has since recouped some of those losses, though the question still remains about how Take-Two plans to integrate its IP into the mobile market. As creators of hardcore console games such as Grand Theft Auto, BioShock, and Red Dead Redemption, it'll be interesting to see how Take-Two leverages its relationship with this new publisher behind games such as Farmville and Words with Friends. Next up, we've got a pair of topics, both stemming from an interview that the New York Times conducted with Xbox head Phil Spencer. Most notable, I think, is the fact that the Xbox Series X and S have outsold every previous Xbox up to this point in its lifespan. Spencer said in the interview, quote, "When you think about trying to get an Xbox or a new PlayStation right now in the market, they're really hard to find. And it's not because supply is smaller than it's ever been. Supply is actually as big as it's ever been. It's that demand is exceeding the supply for all of us. At this point, we've sold more of this generation of Xboxes, which is the Xbox Series X and S, than we had any previous version of Xboxes. So it's our job to get the supply there to meet that demand." End quote. This is, of course, excellent news for Microsoft and a good overall sign for the health of the console market in general. Later in the interview, while Spencer was describing how the Xbox ecosystem differentiated itself from services like Netflix, he brought up the necessity for the retail and transactional market to exist alongside the subscription model. When pressed point blank about which business sector was bigger, Spencer was quick to admit that transactions brought in a larger revenue stream than subscriptions. Though he was quick to point out how fast Game Pass is growing, Spencer acknowledged that the transaction business is, quote, very large for Xbox. Staying with Xbox and Phil Spencer, Tom Warren over at The Verge has put together a succinct breakdown over swelling complaints in the Halo Infinite community. Titled, "Xbox players are fed up with forced crossplay against PC gamers," the name pretty much says it all. Crossplay has been a popular feature in multiplayer games for several years now, but it appears Halo Infinite developer 343 Industries went a step too far by forcing console crossplay with PC players in many of the game's playlists. Infinite's free-to-play nature is more conducive for traditional PC cheaters, so combining this with the forced console crossplay has proven to be a less than fun experience for many Halo players. What's worse is this also contradicts comments Phil Spencer told GameSpot back in 2016, quote, "I'll never force somebody in our games who's playing with a controller or a mouse and keyboard to play against somebody with a different control scheme. Mouse and keyboard rotation speed is faster than controller. We know that. You'll lose." End quote. I can't imagine, especially now with all this attention, that 343 will maintain course on this issue, so we'll just have to see what future patches hold for Halo Infinite. This week, Bloomberg has an interesting report regarding Sony's 2022 console manufacturing plans. Of course, the pandemic has put a huge burden on PlayStation 5 supply chains, and it doesn't appear that 2022 will offer much relief. To help offset potential missed opportunities, Sony has decided to continue manufacturing PlayStation 4s, whose chipset wouldn't affect that of its next-gen younger brother. According to Bloomberg sources, this was not always the plan for Sony. Originally, PS4 manufacturing wasn't going to continue past 2021, but as Phil Spencer said in a previous story, demand for next-gen consoles is higher than ever. A cost-effective entry into the PlayStation ecosystem is something Sony can capitalize on considering COVID has slowed the transition between console generations. Sony's leadership has said in the past that they believe in generations, and it looks like they're going to need to be believing in the PS4 for just a little while longer. Fans of the long-running Armored Core franchise may have something to look forward to if a recently uncovered survey is to be trusted. Reset Era user Red Licorice first posted that they had been a participant in a survey for an upcoming entry in the From Software developed Mecha series. In the survey, the game is described as, quote, a third-person shooter mecha action title that lets you move around an overwhelmingly scaled map that represents a unique sci-fi world with dynamic mech action. You will face strong enemies and fierce battles both long and short range using guns and blades, end quote. Red Licorice shared not only the description of the game, but also some heavily watermarked screenshots and concept art for what could end up being Armored Core 6. If that wasn't enough, the survey states proudly that the sci-fi world was created by From Software maestro Hidetaka Miyazaki. While we don't know if Miyazaki will be in the director's chair, it's clear that he'll at least have some sort of role in shaping the world and setting. Red Licorice goes on to describe some of the boss battles in the game as very Souls-like, so it'll be really interesting to see if From Software can pull off this Souls mixed with Armored Core kind of vibe. News has been percolating this week out of the UK, and it pertains to Sony's reboot of the Twisted Metal franchise. Andy Robinson over at Video Games Chronicle reported earlier this week that the planned Twisted Metal reboot has, in fact, changed development hands from the Liverpool-based Lucid Games to a European-based Sony internal studio. Robinson followed up the report on Wednesday, confirming that the new developer was none other than the recently acquired Firesprite. Given the nature of Destruction All-Stars, it makes a lot of sense that Sony was sort of testing Lucid Games to see if they were up to the task of rebooting Twisted Metal, but it's also not surprising that Sony moved on from Lucid considering Destruction All-Stars' critical and commercial reception. Firesprite now apparently has their hands quite full, as we reported just last week that they officially announced their new PSVR 2 title, Horizon Call of the Mountain. Of course, we could still be months or even years away from any sort of Twisted Metal announcement, so fans will just have to be patient for now. Next up, a story that just missed last week's deadline, and one that former TRG News Editor-in-Chief Adam Sutherland verbally assaulted me over for not covering last week, and that's the existence of Mario Kart 9. After the overwhelming success of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which has sold over 38 million copies on Switch, it comes as no surprise that Mario Kart 9 would eventually rear its head. The news comes via GamesIndustry.biz, who posted 2022 predictions from various respected industry analysts. One analyst, Dr. Sarkan Toto, just outright says the game's in development. Quote, I am aware Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still selling very well on the Nintendo Switch, but Mario Kart 9 is in active development and comes with a new twist, and Nintendo could tease it this year, end quote. That's essentially all the info we have at this moment. Many have begun to speculate what that new twist might be, whether it's a live service pitch or some fundamental change to the karting formula. Either way, if this report is to be trusted, there's a really good chance that we could hear word from it this summer. And finally today, we have some updates regarding some highly anticipated 2022 titles and their release dates. First up, Nintendo dropped a new trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land on their YouTube channel, showing off some of the new co-op gameplay and copy abilities. At the end of the trailer, Nintendo revealed a March 25th release date for the exciting 3D Kirby title. And in less exciting news, upcoming Xbox and PC game Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl has been delayed to December 8th, 2022. Originally set to release in April, this marks a roughly 8-month delay for the post-apocalyptic shooter. Clearly, developer GSC Game World thought the game needed extra time in the oven, so as with most delays, we'll just have to happily swallow this one, knowing it should end up helping the final product. Alright guys, that's it for this edition of the Dear Listeners Newsroom. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like what you saw, of course, hit that like button below, subscribe to the TRG YouTube channel. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the news. We'll see you next week.